Welcome to Local 3's 9th podcast, Breaking Ground, which discusses all things labor in the interest of improving economic conditions of the middle class and unions. This is our first filmed episode, which you can now watch on Local 3's official YouTube page, and the link can be found on our website at OE3.org. Again, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy! Welcome to Local 3's 9th podcast, Breaking Ground. I have with us today Treasurer Nate Tucker. Nate, how are you?
Doing good. How are you, Mandy?
I'm all right. This is our first filmed episode, so welcome. You are our first guinea pig on camera. For those of you who are listening at Buzzsprout, find us on the Local 3 official YouTube page to see this footage. Links for that are available on our website at OE3.org and also on the mobile phone app. So Nate, you're going to talk to us today about the Local 3 pension. This is one of the greatest benefits of being an operating engineer. And I think it's important that we go into a little bit of history first about the pension.
Absolutely.
So I've read about this in some of our history books and the Engineers News magazine. But from what I understand, the pension was started in 1958 at just a nickel an hour. And at that time, the members were kind of nervous about this because they thought that was a lot of money to set aside. And to put it in perspective, a normal retirement pension at that time was about $60 a month.
Right. Can you imagine that? Those workers in 1958 taking that leap of faith to take hard-earned money out of their pocket and start this great pension. I mean, it's like anything that anybody's never done before, right? They're scared of it. They don't trust it. They don't understand what it's going to do for them or how it's going to work or if it's even going to be there for them. So the great members that came before us all that had the foresight to understand just how important security in retirement is, to take that leap of faith, so to speak, and put that nickel towards getting this pension plan started is an incredible thing.
Yeah, they got a lot of pushback at the time. And again, some more perspective for you. In last year, 2020, we gave out $385 million to Local 3 retirees. So look at the leap that was.
Right. Isn't that great? I mean, close to $400 million going to the people that built and fought for what we have today, and making sure they have security, their spouses have security. It's an incredible thing, and it's quite a benefit for sure.
Well, Nate, there might be some listeners or viewers at this point who don't know who you are. Can you give us a little background about how you got involved in the construction industry?
Sure. The pension is one of the things that kind of got me hooked in looking at becoming a union construction operator. In the 90s, I was working in the timber industry, right? In the Stanislaus National Forest, running logging equipment for very little money, very long, dirty hours, and absolutely no benefits. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to a Local 3 organizer, not through the work scene, actually through a hobby I had of race cars at the time. And we met up, and he started talking to me about the importance of my future, because at the time I was just running wild and racing cars and logging and doing that type of thing, and really didn't think much about what was going to happen tomorrow. I was living in the moment. So I was very fortunate, not unlike a lot of other members, right, who have met key people throughout their careers that kind of showed them the way, so to speak. And this organizer, I remember one day distinctly, we were over at his house. I was there to buy some car parts from him. And he had the trunk of his union car open, and he happened to have a pension statement sitting there, which I'll tell you about as an organizer and labor rep later on in my life. We always carried a pension statement around so we could show non-union workers, hey, this is what I have coming at retirement. So anyways, he had that in his trunk, and we got to talking about pension, and that sounded real good to me, right? And that kind of started the dialogue to have me start looking in construction rather than the logging industry. And it wasn't too long after that I made that leap over.
Well, it's interesting that you had that foresight at such a young age, because I know Gosh, when I was in my 20s before I started working for Local 3, I was like, retirement, well, that's like 40 years from now, you know? So for that to have been a draw for you, what exactly is a pension, and how does it differ from, say, a 401k? Because I think most people are familiar with the term 401k, which is a defined contribution plan. So what is the Local 3 pension?
So the Local 3 pension, they're both the same in the respect that they're supposed to provide retirement benefits for you when you're done working. The 401k has its place, and I'm not going to say that it's all bad, but it's certainly it's got a lot of downfalls that the pension plan, the traditional defined benefit pension plan that's been around and used to be the golden standard for the working force in America has. And basically the defined pension plan is an amount that you work for, and when you retire, you're guaranteed or promised that amount every month for the rest of your life. And with a 401k, it's not that way. You've basically got a chunk of money when you retire, and you have to figure out how to make that last. And all too often, workers don't save enough. 401ks typically are based on a single employer, right? So if I'm working for Joe's construction company, who is not part of a union, but maybe he offers a 401k, which some companies don't even do that. But when I stop working for Joe's, a lot of times I have the option to either cash it out or roll it over into another retirement account. Most of the time, people do not roll them over. They cash them out, they spend them, they go pay bills or whatever, and that the intent of having that money there for retirement just never works out. With the defined pension plan, the defined benefit plan, you don't have that option. And with the Local 3 or any union environment with a defined benefit multi-employer plan, if I stop working for Joe's Construction, who's a union contractor contributing to the pension fund on my behalf, and I go work for Pedro's Construction, they both contribute to the same fund, and my fund continues to grow no matter who I work for. So I have that flexibility, which is also nice as a worker, right? Because it never feels good to feel like you're trapped in a place of employment. And sometimes a worker can start feeling that way if all of their retirement is with that one employer.
They're stuck.
They feel stuck, right? With Local 3, you don't have to feel that way. If you're not happy where you're at, you can go work for one of the other 1,000 employers that we've got contributing to this fund.
And you don't even have to think about investing or having the self-discipline to set aside money on your own, because the Local 3 pension is already invested for you, correct?
Correct. So you can, and we recommend that you do. And Local 3 has some other retirement vehicles with the Annuity. And it really depends on where you work. And Local 3 is such a diverse organization with so many different bargaining units and different scenarios that I want to caution everybody that's listening today about this discussion, because we're talking about participation in the Local 3 plan.
And that's part of your collective bargaining agreement if that's negotiated into your particular agreement through the union.
That's correct. But we have a lot of members who maybe don't participate because that wasn't part of their agreement. We have public employee members that are in the PERS system and not in the Local 3 pension plan. So I just want to caution everybody listening that we're talking about a specific group of people that participate in this plan. And we've got other vehicles with the Annuity in some agreements, like I said, PERS, some company 401ks. So there's other things out there that people will invest in, and we encourage that, right? The Local 3 pension plan will take care of you very well, but it never hurts to have another bucket to pull from.
And we do have some members who do have investments, who do quite well on their own. And some of them may be wondering, well, how come the things that I do, Local 3 doesn't do? Or how come my particular 401k is doing so well in this time of year when maybe Local 3's wasn't? So can you explain kind of that process, I guess, how the pension is actually funded and governed, and why you can't take advice or do the same things that may work for an individual person who invests.
Sure. I'm going to keep it at a pretty high level there, but basically, the contributions, the funding for the pension comes from employers that are signatory to Local 3 and are signatory to a collective bargaining agreement that states they'll make contributions to the operating engineers pension fund. There is an hourly amount that's negotiated in that agreement that's paid in for all hours worked or paid for each worker. That money goes to the trust fund, and it goes into the trust. And because it's a multi-employer defined benefit plan that's governed by ERISA and all the rules that that surround that type of fund, we're restricted or limited, I'll say, to the type of investments we can do.
You can't just like go invest in Bitcoin.
Right, and we've got to follow what's called the prudent man rule, and the prudent man
Or woman.
or prudent woman would say that it would be too risky to risk the lives of thousands of workers' retirement savings on Bitcoin. So we have to diversify our investments by law. We have to diversify our investments. We've got to make sure that we're in it for the long haul. We're not looking to make
The next big buck.
buck. We're looking to make the dollar 30 years from now and build on it slowly.
So you have to be frugal. Also, the pension plan pays out every month, whereas an individual investor doesn't have a giant payout. Can you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's an interesting point. You mentioned that sometimes members that do invest or play in the market or have a different retirement vehicle question how come their annuity or their 401k is 100% funded, and why isn't Local 3's pension fund 100% funded? Well, I usually ask them, how much money did you pull out of your 401k or your annuity? And the answer is zero. So our pension fund pays out essentially 10% right now on today's numbers. We pay out 10% of its assets every year to retirees. So if you look at it another way, you're almost starting from a 10% hole before you ever earn a dime, right?
That's important to remember.
Excuse me. It is, and we've never missed a pension check, and we're not going to miss a pension check. We keep sending them out, and we keep building the fund. But it's important for members to realize that it's really two different things we're talking about when we talk about retirement schemes or retirement arrangements.
And you're at the mercy of a board, right? So the governing body of the pension is made up of what?
Yeah, so there's a board of trustees who are oversight for the pension fund. It's made up of equal amount of union representatives and employer representatives. So the union side and the employer side get together and make these decisions on benefit levels, investment managers, investment consultants, and we're meeting all the time on this stuff. This is something we never take our eye off the ball on. We're dealing with this usually on a daily basis, at least weekly, and meeting all the time, trying to make sure that we're doing the best we can for the participants.
And those are high-level discussions, right? I mean, I know I would have no interest, and it would be very expensive for me on my own to pay for like a financial advisor to tell me, how to save my money or how to, what conservative investments are based on my retirement age. You guys, and in agreement and conjunction with the employers, are making sure that this fund is doing the best it can for about 30,000 some people, and also for yourselves, because
Right.
these employers, the trustees are also union members who have a vested interest in the retirement as well.
Absolutely, that we've got a vested personal interest because our retirement funds, our retirement checks are going to come from there at some point too. But not only that, as a board of trustees of a defined benefit plan, we have what's called a fiduciary liability to do what's absolutely best for the participants of the fund. I can't do what's best for Nate Tucker or what's best for Mandy. We have to do what's best for the entire group of participants. So you talk about an individual who wants to go pay a financial advisor or pay an accountant or pay different professionals to
Which
help
isn't
them.
cheap.
It's expensive. Not only is it expensive, oftentimes those people aren't held to the high standards
It's
we are.
risky.
It's absolutely risky because we're going to go back to Joe's construction company that has a consultant for his 401k.
He's like his father-in-law
Might be his father-in-law
who like works for Roblox or something.
and who's taken a percentage of the cut, or maybe
Yeah.
investing your money in things that are beneficial for Joe's father-in-law rather than the participant.
What you're saying, Nate, is that you guys have kind of thought this one through since 1958.
So-
Not you personally, but you all have sort of the best interests of everybody at heart, and you're governed by certain laws that restrict you from betting, so to speak, on the next best thing.
Absolutely. And I didn't think it through. It's been thought through well
But you're
before me.
thinking it through
but
right now.
But I think it through every day now.
Yeah.
And I live, eat, and breathe this stuff. And I try to be as educated as I can and up on what's going on with the pension fund. But it's really an honor to carry this on. Like you said, those folks that started it with a nickel and the people that thought it through and got it started are the ones we owe a debt of gratitude to, and it's really just an honor to continue that on for them.
You had mentioned the importance of a pension and the fact that you are going to receive a monthly payout for the rest of your life upon retirement, something that you don't have to think about in this moment that is coming. Social Security may not be the only thing that people need in this day and age, right? People are living longer. Many people who are relying only on Social Security are forced today to work well into their 70s, some even their 80s, and are just barely getting by. So why is the pension such an amazing benefit?
So you're absolutely right, and I'll go back to you asked a question a little bit ago about what got me into this, and you said that I had the foresight to see that the pension was important.
Because I sure didn't.
Well, and I don't know what your personal situation is, but my personal situation is that I grew up in a household of a mother and a father who weren't in a union and had no retirement savings. And at my early 20s, I started hearing them worry about what they're going to do because they hadn't thought about it and they hadn't gotten that situation. So I had a real good example of what not to do because they were looking at Social Security as their only source of income, and that's just people do it. I mean, there are people that do it, and to me, that's no way to live. When I retire, I want to be able to live more comfortably than what my $1,800 a month is on Social Security, and that's why I talk about having different buckets to pull from. You know, if you've got one bucket to pull from and it's Social Security, that's a pretty bleak existence.
Well, with the Local 3 pension, what is the normal retirement age
So
on average?
So on the books, normal retirement age is 65, but Local 3 pension has some really good service pensions that basically reward longevity for participating in the plan.
So your retirement age is based on how many years of credit you receive, correct? How many years you work, how many hours, and how old you are. Is that true? Like there's a form. So again, I want to be cautious about going into real deep detail about this because everybody's got a different set of circumstances and there's different rules. based on your collective bargaining agreement?
On the agreement,
Okay.
when you got in, what your previous employment was. There's some really deep stuff down in the weeds that we can get
Okay.
into. So I want to make sure that we're talking high level and just generally about some of the main ways our folks can retire. I want to say, though, that each person should contact the trust fund when they get close to retiring or go to a pre-retirement meeting, talk to somebody about their specific situation rather than taking the general information we're given here as the gospel. But let's talk about the biggest one that everybody talks about, the Rule of 85 pension, all right? Everybody hears about it. Some people think they know how it works. Oftentimes they don't, but it's really pretty simple. It has to do with your age, your years as a participant in the pension plan, not your years as a union member, but your credits in the pension plan. And if they equal 85, you can retire at the earliest age 55.
Which is awesome.
Right? I mean, there's not a lot of places where you can retire at 55, but our industry is very hard on our workers, right? We're not sitting in an office getting paper cuts, and you know, we're out there getting our backs beat up, our necks beat up, dealing with the elements. It's a tough life. It's getting better because, of course, technology is getting better. But it's still
hydraulics.
Right. It's still no easy life, right? So to have that benefit to where you can go work hard for 30 years and retire on an early pension, whether it's the Rule of 85 pension or the 35 and 20 pension, there's a couple. You know, those are a couple examples of how you can get out earlier than 65. It's important, right? Because who wants to be beating your back up at 65? It's hard to make it to 55, right? So,
and that's probably why the pension was created, you know, and then the money invested and the way it works is such that you can retire with dignity after this long, difficult, hard on your body career. And we hear stories all the time. We actually have a section in the magazine, the Engineers News right now, where we highlight members and their hobbies that they're afforded to have because of their career in Local 3, but then also in their retirement. People are doing incredible things. We've got like silversmiths, and we've got people who show rodeo. We have guys who work on their cars. We have NASCAR ownership. I mean, there's so many interesting hobbies that Local 3 members have that they wouldn't have the ability to pursue without this career and or the retirement that the union has offered them. And I think that's all of our aims, right? We don't want to give the best years of our life to our career, keep working until you're 85 and then roll over and die. Right. I mean, I like what I do, but I have some ideas for the after when I am retired.
And isn't that what it's all about, right? We're going to give up 30 years of our life, but when we get there, we should be able to go
do whatever hell we want,
right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, our retirees can do that. Now, amounts of a pension are going to vary, and it's
depends on how long you've been here, how old, young you were when you got in, and how many hours you've worked.
Right. There's quite a few factors, and those are absolutely some of them. The more hours you work, the more your pension's going to be at retirement.
That's an incentive.
It's absolutely an incentive, and right now our average hours worked under this plan is about 1,800 hours a year. But we've got folks that do double that, right? We've got folks that work over 3,000 hours a year, and that's a lot of time on the job. That's a lot of time away from your family. That's a lot of time working weekends.
Maybe living in a trailer, not even in your own home state.
Well, it's not a lot of time to do a lot of fun. So it's good that when you get to that retirement age, you're moneyed up and you can go buy that RV or go travel the world or do whatever you want to do, or just screw around your house and live comfortably. Whatever you want to do, sleep in, right? These guys are used to getting up at 3 a.m. and going wherever they're going. And, I don't care what somebody does. I just want them to be comfortable happy doing it
as they do it.
Right.
Well, that's an incentive for some of our listeners who might be trying to think about a career path. The sooner you get in, the more training you have, the more employable you are, and the earlier you can retire. So, I mean, I talk to members in the field all the time that are like, God darn it, I wish I'd gotten in a lot earlier. Or I was working non-union for 10 years and then I decided, well, I might make the leap. Get in early,
right?
Get trained.
And that's, I said a little bit ago that a lot of us will carry some pension statements in our cars when we're out talking to non-union workers. Maybe not the most current one, but maybe one that's got 10 years on it. And you can show them, look, you're working non-union right now. You've got the skill. You just don't have the confidence yet to come over here. And I'm going to tell you, you can do it. Just come over here and this is what we have to offer you. And sometimes they look at that and it clicks. Sometimes they look at it and they don't care, just kind of timing is everything with those folks. But it's hard to argue for a non-union worker that's 25, 30 years
Maybe
old.
has no retirement or.
Right, who has nothing probably, and at the current rate, if he came in and worked the average hours, 1,800 hours, under the master construction agreement for California, 1,800 hours times the $7 contribution rate, which is what the master agreement, the benefit factor, the benefit amount on the California master agreement is, times 1.25% equals $157. So every year you work, you're building your pension by $157. So in other words, if they come in, put in 10 years, they've already got $1,600 a month. So they've doubled what they're going to get in Social Security.
That's incredible.
If they stay here for a 30-year career, they're gonna have, if they're only doing the average,
If they go beyond that, they get more.
Right. If they're only doing the average, they're going to get a pension check from us for the rest of their life for approximately $5,000 under today's rules, right? Not saying things won't change or things won't go up, because like you said, when the pension started with a nickel, those folks couldn't fathom what you could get for a pension now. So, it's relative.
Relative to the market, the economy.
Market
and so
and the
is our
time.
industry relative to the market and
Absolutely.
the economy. So we talk about retirement. We talk about what a beautiful thing this is for many of our Local 3 members. When the vested member passes away, what happens to their spouse? Do they receive any of that benefit?
Again, general information, because that depends on the timing of when you were married. If you were married prior to retiring and when you retire, you're given a several options on how you want your pension to be paid. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of that because everybody has a choice. But generally, the choice that people make,
depending on how much you care about your spouse or how old you are.
Right. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's really why it's a choice, because there may be somebody who's in poor health at retirement and they don't think they're going to live very long and they want to leave more of their pension amount to their spouse to continue on, and they can select a different amount to their spouse. Generally though, a 50-50 husband and wife pension is pretty common, and basically what that means is that when you retire, you select that option, and if your pension is $5,000 a month, generally speaking, there's some factors again that get off into the weeds about the age of your spouse and that type of thing. But if you're married when you retire, your pension is $5,000 a month. If you pass away, when you pass away, your spouse will receive half of that amount, so $2,500 for the rest of his or her life, right? So it's really a pension that pays for 2 lifetimes, which...
That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible, right? It's incredible. And we have a lot of surviving spouses that are still on our plan that receive checks today or each month. We've got about 16,500 checks that go out every month, and I don't know the exact number of those that are surviving spouse checks, but it's a chunk of them. And a lot of those spouses stay active in the union. They
call me. They want to get there. Hey, I'm not getting the magazine. My husband passed away. Can you put me on the list? I read it every month. I think I read it more than he did or she did.
Right. And these spouses that support the worker for however long they support them, I don't care if it's a year or 30 years, whatever.
They made the lunches. They probably brewed the coffee.
Probably. And we're just there to hear them gripe when they got home because the grading foreman's a jerk and
they raised the kids because he was like traveling for weekends.
Right. It's nice that you can not only take care of the member but their family in that way too.
You had mentioned that people should contact some of our representatives in the trust funds office if they had questions. And they can also calculate their pension like right today in real time, right? They can go to the trust fund's website, which I think is OE3trustfunds.org.
I believe that's the
So you can actually go on as a Local 3 member, put in your registration number, your age, your years, whatever. It'll come up and it'll be like, if you were to retire or to quit now and retire at 65, this would be your monthly payout, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But we do have some really well-versed fund representatives, Sonia Brown, Esther Redmond, Bob Miller. They're all available and do these pre-retirement district visits. I mean, COVID right now is a little bit strange, but they're doing a lot of stuff over the phone. But I know they'll walk you through your 18 different situations and questions and really lay it out there, because retirement is a big step for people when it comes to trying to figure out, the best plan for you, when to, pull the trigger or whatever.
Right, or to get really into the weeds in your specific situation.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to retirement, if you're like a lot of folks in the construction industry, you probably have a divorce or two somewhere along the line.
No.
And, that plays into your pension calculation, and having the proper documents for that type of stuff, having the quadro from the separation and how that factors into your pension. Those folks can really dive into your specific situation. And
how cool is that? You've got someone that you can just call and be like, look, I don't know what to do.
right,
What are my options?
right, it's pretty cool. And the trust fund website is a great resource. I've registered myself, and I got on there, and you just project out when you want to retire, kind of guess on
cool.
what hours you're going to work, and it'll spit you out a calculation
Like,
of.
bing.
Right, and it's that quick. And I don't know how many members use that. I hope everybody listening starts to use it if they're not using it now. It's a great tool that you can kind of plan your future, and maybe adjust how many hours you're working or your retirement date based on that. So.
Well, Nate, thanks very much for sitting down and chatting with us today. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add, but for people who don't know about Local 3 and or a pension, I think a career in operating engineers, Local 3, if the college track is not right for you, it's a beautiful career that offers a beautiful retirement where you're taken care of, your spouse possibly taken care of, and you don't have to do all the work on the front end to figure out how to retire with dignity. And even for you 18-year-olds who think you'll never retire, it does come a lot faster than you realize. And you'd be awfully darn happy when you get there and it exists.
Yeah, so I guess the only other thing I wanted to add is that I would encourage the members to ask the professionals, and don't take what they hear at lunchtime out on the job site as gospel, because
Are you saying there's a lot of wrong information out there, Nate?
there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of wrong information that floats around. And believe me, I worked in the construction industry. I've sat on that windrow of dirt at lunchtime and told all sorts of stories and listened to all sorts of things.
Tall tales.
And somebody thinks they know, or they heard from their brother-in-law that this was the real deal, and they start spreading it on the job site. Next thing you know, there's this misinformation floating around. So if you hear something about the pension that either sounds funny or doesn't sound right, call somebody up. I mean, the one I heard all the time was, back in the day, we used to be able to get 2 pension credits a year. No, that's never been a rule. There was a period of time where you could get a little more than a pension credit. I think it was a pension and a quarter, but it was only for a credit and a quarter. It was only for a couple of years. So a pension credit, in order to get a pension credit, you've got to work and have 1,000 hours contributed in that calendar year. You can get fractions of a credit below that, but you cannot get 2 pension credits a year.
No matter
what. It's not a thing, and I hear it constantly, and people want to be pissed off about it, that how come we can't get 2 pension credits a year? Well, you can't. I mean, we've got to have this pension fund be able to pay out benefits for everyone forever. And as much as I would like to tell everybody we can all retire at 40 years old, the math doesn't work.
Well, we have to kind of think about everyone else too here, right? I mean, the new members today are paying for you're paying for the people who come after you.
We're all
Correct.
doing our part.
You're doing our part to help out everybody.
We're all doing our part.
It wouldn't exist without your union dues, your hours, your skill set, the employers, investments, and the strength of the economy, as well as the demand for construction. It's a complicated thing.
It is a complicated thing, and there are so many factors that go into making it work. And another misconception out there is that we talked about it, touched on it briefly about our pension being not 100% funded, like their annuity accounts or their 401k accounts. And some of the rules and laws that govern pension plans that those individual accounts don't have to deal with. So I'm probably going to start boring everybody right now, but I want to go through the history a little bit of how that happened, right? Prior to the early 2000s, pension funds like ours could not be funded more than 100% without making plan enhancements. So through those big years where we were just killing it in the markets and the economy was expanding at a crazy rate, we were 100% funded. The federal government said, if you have got to make plan enhancements, you've got to give that money away. You can't save it for a rainy day. So we did that. Well, I didn't do that. I wasn't a trustee at the time, but the people that were in charge did, and they made those decisions based on investment consultants and money managers' advice, professionals' advice, trying to comply with the law. So he made all these promises, right? And there's probably people listening right now who remember when we had a 3% benefit factor. And the tough part about that is when the dot-com bubble burst in, I think it was 2002, somewhere in that neighborhood. All of a sudden, these pension funds who couldn't save for a rainy day were immediately underfunded. Well, then the federal government, in their grand wisdom, looked at it and went, oh, shoot,
Whoops.
Would have been nice if we let these pension funds save for a rainy day, so when these things happen, they've got some cushion to be able to deal with them, which they did. I think in 2004 they changed the law to where now a pension fund like ours can fund to 140% of its obligations. So you can fund a lot of money to save for a rainy day. Unfortunately, we all know what happened shortly after that, right? 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. They changed the law. We're kind of reeling, trying to capture, that money that was lost in dot-com bubble. Then in 2008, at the end of 2008, everything tanked.
The housing crisis.
The housing crisis.
You could buy a house if you had a pulse. The banking crisis.
Yeah. So that really hit us hard. Luckily, though, because of how diversified we are in our investments, when the stock market lost 50% of its assets, our pension fund didn't do it nearly that bad. We lost about 25%. Basically, with the pension money we spent to cover retirees' checks and the losses in our investments that year, we went backwards about $1.25 billion in 2008, right? That's a tough thing to swallow.
And work hours were way down.
There was very little work. Luckily, we had a change in administration where they did take some money and put out into an infrastructure package. It wasn't nearly enough, but it helped us get by and helped some of our folks keep working. But we lost a lot of members, and a lot of people lost everything through that. Our pension fund, though, survived. And sitting here today, after we had lost, over $1 billion, we are pushing close to $5 billion in that fund now.
And that's after, COVID too, which decimated many, many industries.
It's after COVID. It's after we paid nearly $400 million a year
last year
to our retirees. Last year, it's gone up each year.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact number. It's billions of dollars we've paid out since 2008 to our retirees, and still the fund has grown. And that's through diligent management. That's through through extreme oversight by the trustees and by the officers of the union, by the employer trustees. And that's from, quite frankly, the workers sucking it up and understanding how important this pension is and taking money and keeping it funded and getting us through that time. Because guess what?
Another one's coming.
There's going to be a downturn again, hopefully not that bad. But what I was going to say is that the banks got bailed out. The banks got their $1 trillion bailout. What did workers and unions get for a bailout? We never get a bailout. We handle it ourselves, and these workers and the operating engineers, Local 3 members, stepped up to the plate and handled it themselves. We didn't get a handout. We worked for it, and we built this pension back to where it is today. So I'm pretty proud of that. I'm proud to have been a trustee through a lot of that.
To have seen that.
To have seen that. And, I look forward to being able to reward those folks who did step up and do that, because it was quite a bit of courage to be able to say, yeah, we believe in this, and we're willing to take money out of our pocket and keep this thing going. And that's what those members stepped up and did. But I want to make sure that the folks who pulled money out of their pocket to keep this thing going and keep those retiree checks going are taken care of too. And I'm not going to forget them. And at some point, we're going to be able to do things that can reward that with the pension. And there's all sorts of ideas out there on how we do that. I'm not going to go into those.
What you're saying is we're moving in the right direction. It looks like we've survived COVID. It's nothing near the recession that we had in 2008. And if all things remain equal and or, COVID, whatever that the future looks like, construction is going to be fine.
Yeah, the future of construction right now is looking great. I mean,
we've got the PRO Act, possibly a federal infrastructure bill, which we haven't had in a really long time.
Right. We always have people making promises of an infrastructure bill, but nobody ever really coming through with it. And it sounds like the Biden administration is gonna put that thing through, and it's a ton of
multi-trillion dollars.
Multi-trillions of infrastructure work. That's our bread and butter. And not just that. I mean, that's federal spending, but you look at the housing market right now, there's still a need for housing, and they're building housing subdivisions right now.
Pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere. And it just looks really, really good for the immediate future as far as our work is concerned.
It's a great time to be an operating engineer.
I think it's always a great time to be an operating engineer, but it's pretty darn good right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Nate, very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Breaking Ground today. Like what you heard? Have questions or want us to do a show on a specific topic? Email us at oe3questions.org. Find links to future episodes on oe3buzzsprout.com, the Local 3 website, or the mobile phone app. Also, you can follow us now on Facebook, Operating Engineers Local 3 Bulletin Board, where you can share and read labor news, photos, and announcements. Thanks for listening.